Welcome to the latest episode of the More People podcast. I'm your host, Richard Hanwell, Managing Director for More People. I'm thrilled today to have Peter Durose with me. Welcome, Peter. If you'd be so kind as to just introduce yourself to ourselves today.
I'm Peter Durose. I'm the Managing Director of 20 Degrees, which most people probably formerly knew as Coregeo.
I'm keen to understand the different challenges faced between own label and branded organisations that you've kind of come up against.
Okay, I think one of the big differences is where the value sits with regards to own label and a branded product and a branded company. So own label has become increasingly competitive, almost a race to the bottom. And actually what the brands do is try and create value for everybody within that chain. And that's certainly from a fresh produce perspective is what we're looking to do. So whether it's Pink Lady apples or tender stem broccoli, it's getting value into that chain for the grower, for the licensee and seller, and actually importantly then for the retailer. So the retailer is seeing real value returned to them. And hopefully within that value is good margin. So everybody's getting something out of the supply chain, which makes it a very positive outcome.
Well, when it comes down to the relationship with the retailer, does that differ? Where is the power in that situation?
From a 20 degree perspective, we're sort of kind of in this sort of slightly separate bubble. We're not growing it, we're not selling it. So we're not talking to the retailer about price. What we're talking to the retailers about is how we build their category, how we build their sales through our brand with their customers by creating a relationship that infuses the customer to buy our product.
How does that understanding travel through the relationships? You obviously got the retailer that needs to purchase and that they need to be selling on at a very competitive price. But when you've got growers with umpteen issues and challenges coming up, how is those challenges managed throughout that kind of supply chain?
I mean, I think one of the clear things there is with regards to Pink Lady and Tender Stem is that the number of growers that we're working with, they are a relatively small group in the firmament that is kind of global fresh produce.
Yeah.
So actually, from that perspective, we're only growing Tender Stem, mainly in 3 countries for the UK market. So what you then have is a group of growers who have a little bit more power because they are only competing amongst themselves, a much smaller group.
Yeah.
It's still a competitive set, and then likewise with the licensees who sell our product. There's probably only 15 or 16 of them in the UK.
Right.
And that's enough to create suitable competition.
Yeah.
To give the retailers and other customers what they need. But actually, it's also enough to make sense prevail. So it's not just this sort of continuous drive to the bottom.
At some stage, UK farmers, growers abroad, etc., they have to be making money, and that education piece needs passing on to the consumer. But I guess, how does one do that through the power of the retailers and explain that through?
I mean, one of the other things is about managing supply. So, from a Pink Lady perspective, I'm probably going to badly misquote it now, which I shouldn't do. But let's say, for example, there's 400 million kilos sold worldwide from multiple sources and multiple countries of origin. And the UK and Europe have been particularly Europe, been absolutely leading in terms of developing that market for Pink Lady. But actually what we spend a lot of time and effort doing now is developing other markets. So I'm also responsible for the Gulf states in terms of within the Middle East. And we've been developing sales very successfully there over the last 4 or 5 years with growth of probably 15 to 20%, particularly in the last few. And what that does is it becomes a pressure valve, but a positive pressure valve for when we have maybe a little bit too much stock.
How do those challenges differ when you're trying to break into the market?
Very different cultures, very different retail structure in terms of the way the businesses make. There's a lot of modern retail in those places now. It's still about relationships, getting to meet those retailers and understanding their requirements. There tends to be a little bit more flexibility in those markets. So we do a lot more trade merchandising. So, which is great fun. So big displays of Pink Lady apples in what are very large hypermarket stores, which we just can't do in the UK. We work across as 20 degrees, just in terms of our business. We work in effectively UK, Middle East and Europe and a little bit of Africa. We're dealing with all of we're operating in 35, 40 countries.
When it comes to employment, when you're looking at when you're managing a branded business versus own label, does that have an impact when we think about what one can associate themselves with a brand easily as a consumer? When it comes to employment, does that have an impact at all?
We are recruiting specialists, generally speaking, highly capable agile specialists because of the number of countries and complexity that we deal with. But we want branded people within our business. We need marketing and social media and digital experts. We need legal representation, financial representation. And finally, and really, really importantly, we need fresh produce commercial understanding, because a big part of what we do is talking to the retailers and the licensees. So we have a really broad spread. We're still a relatively small team, but actually within that, we have a number of experts who are highly experienced and capable in terms of what they do. And meshing all of those skills and capabilities is great.
Just curious to see whether, from an employment perspective, whether it's easier to attract the talent that are coming to an organisation as well known as Pink Lady. Everyone's going to know who that organisation is, versus going forward to said vegetable supplier. We all consume their products, we just don't know it because they're in the retailer's backs.
When we are recruiting, we find the ability to talk about Pink Lady apples. It may be that just interviewees are very wise and say, "Oh, my Pink Lady's my favourite apple." Maybe it's true, and actually that's a big benefit.
An icebreaker, if nothing.
Yeah, certainly from the perspective of Coca-Cola or Amazon or Google, when people are applying for jobs for there, they feel they are joining something that they know.
Yeah, that association.
And I think fresh produce has really struggled with awareness of the amazing job that happens in the fresh produce supply chain.
Am I right in saying it's slightly different in other continents, in other countries, where it's more commonplace to have branded produce?
I think we're seeing more brands. I mean, if we talk about the apple industry, there are a lot more branded apples than there were certainly 20 years ago. That's part of it. So there's an awareness, and I think we're talking about probably a greater awareness in Europe of produce and agriculture in general.
Yeah.
For whatever reason that is. Some of that is in terms of being able to physically see it on the shelf in a store.
Yeah.
And some of it is also about just in life generally. But so I think it's a mix with regards to how that actually works. If you then go to the States or States or Asia, then I think it goes up another level.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of Asia or China, there are huge fresh produce companies now that are operating, and they become very, very well known within their arena, whether that's through the outer cases for loose product, because in some ways it's also harder in lots of these markets because they only sell loose product, whereas we sell a lot of pre-packed product.
Okay.
Pre-pack is a wonderful opportunity to communicate your brand to customers.
So much easier.
We just don't do it very much in the UK.
Yeah.
In Asia and America, what you see is a lot of it on the outer cases, which is a fantastic opportunity. And Pink Lady is probably still one of the only brands that has its case appear on UK shelves, which bright pink, incredibly impactful. Customers now are very aware of Pink Lady.
I'd love to hear more about the rebranding that has happened recently, and the fact that 20 Degrees is not necessarily a company name that a lot of people will have heard a huge amount about. Can you talk us through that journey?
I mean, the first thing that people don't necessarily realize about Coregeo, it's a wholly owned subsidiary originally of APAL, which is Apple and Pear Australia Limited, which is an industry peak body. We have commercial activities in 5 continents. Now, people don't understand that. And part of that is because we've never really put all of that under one name.
Yeah, one umbrella.
And whether that is legal and IP protection, licensing, brand, marketing, quality assurance, all of those different components. And we do all of that across many, many continents with small teams and small specialists. So we're putting it under one commercial platform. The name that has been chosen is 20 Degrees, which was chosen on the basis that 20 degrees is an optimum temperature for the propagation of seeds. There will be lots of people on hearing that will absolutely correct me about all sorts of different things, but that was the storyline that we created. That's fine. But it's fundamental to what we do in terms of propagation of products and taking it forward. And we have those skills as a business in all of these countries. We use our legal expertise in Australia a great deal to support our UK 20 Degrees business. But that's fantastic. It means we have the skills available and we can build a stronger business through that. And I think we'll be looking, the 20 Degrees UK and Europe business is probably the model in terms of where we want to be. But in terms of Europe, in terms of America and Asia, we're growing very rapidly there. And I think in terms of having that umbrella brand will help us reach out to more people to help them build and bring their fresh produce brands to life.
What does 20 Degrees look like in 2028, do you think?
We'll probably have doubled in size. And I think that will be because we will have 4 or 5 more substantial brands that will have been launched during that period.
Yeah.
And they will have been launched across multiple continents. The other benefit of that in terms of retaining value is we're not trying to saturate one market. We can be very selective in terms of how we do that. It's all about building the value for everybody within that chain, including the customer through the branding, and building that forward. So I'm absolutely confident that there's huge growth potential in this business.
Fantastic. And to your earlier point, it all comes down to the relationships with the growers, the relationships with the customers, that communication piece.
Fundamentally, it's about what value we can add as an organization to the grower, to the seller, to the licensee, and to the retailer. And as long as we keep delivering that value and adding through all of the skills that we have as an organization, then there's something in it for everybody.
Looking forward into the industries that you're working within, what impact do you think artificial intelligence can have in the next couple of years for yourselves?
I mean, from an agricultural perspective, and let's face it, I'm no techie and I'm no agriculturalist either. But fundamentally, technology has incredible improvements in how we approach farming in the UK and around the world. So I think AI is going to be incredibly important in terms of using digital cameras and assessing products and assessing farms and assessing production in terms of where they are. So I think there's huge opportunity in that in terms of providing greater insight in terms of what's happening. So I think there's a whole processing thing. In terms of the processing of apples, for example, we know some of our best licensees have always had graphic graders, digital graders, but they've introduced AI into that. So the graders are actually learning to grade the product better. So there's all sorts of ways it can happen. So you go through that. From a marketing perspective, the opportunities are endless. But AI is only as good as the person who is giving it the direction, the input, and everything else. And whilst it's learning very, very rapidly, it still needs the control and the direction to make sure we're getting it right.
Okay. When we look at the UK market within fresh produce, fruit, apples, etc., what do you think are the potential threats to the industry moving into 2025, 2026, away from climate?
There's still a substantial opportunity within fresh produce with regards to how we build and grow what is fundamentally a healthy, successful industry. So I think there's lots of positives and things for us to be optimistic. But what we do need to do is understand the challenges. So, actually, you said except climate. I mean, climate is one of the biggest issues, and understanding that and potentially moving production is a key thing. We have started planting pink lady apple trees in the UK. One of the reasons there is that the climate now is supporting that. We are harvesting those apples at the same time as they're being harvested in the south of France. That wouldn't have been possible 20 years ago.
Nice.
So I think you've got a component there which says, actually, we're responding to that, being supported by everybody within the Pink Lady network. So I think that's a positive opportunity.
Turning a threat into an opportunity.
From a climate perspective. From a perspective of an industry, we've got to start putting some value into what we do, whether that is through branding, through genetics, through varieties. Too many people are not making any money out of this process. The number of growers are going to reduce over time, whether that's in berries, whether that's in root veg, it's going to start reducing unless there's some value to be returned out of that. There's a sort of a local issue around here, isn't there, where there's going to be a solar panel farm on absolutely prime agricultural land, and there's a lot of angst about that. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the farmer's earned his right to do what he wants with that land. But it's more value in putting solar panels on it. I think that's quite sad, really.
We have to look at the education piece as well about making farming profitable, and ensuring, to your point, that skill sector, that industry remains, because we're hugely proud of it. And if said farmer is making enough money and sees future generations making enough money, maybe they wouldn't sell out to solar panels, maybe.
Yes, and I think the industry will have to restructure in some ways to do that. In certain areas, it's done that massively, in others less so. So I think it will survive. It's just there's got to be some value in it at some point.
We've got to evolve. Peter, you're an absolute star. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.